You're a fan of guns, ships, sci-fi stuff, Halo, Star Wars, Xenoblade Chronicles maybe, then hard surface is one of those things that you're gonna have to do and learn to do as an artist. ZBrush has amazing tools to do hard surface. Today I'm going to be showing you the basics of what I believe are the 4 main pillars for hard surface modeling. The first of them is of course deformers. We're going to go over polygroups, we're going to go over ZModeler, and we're going to go over live booleans. We're going to be using all of these techniques and several little workflows that I'm going to be showing you so that we can get to a result like the one that you're seeing right here. So let's go. Very well, my friends. So the first thing that we need to cover for any of the hard surface stuff are deformers. I think these are one of the most basic things that we can use to generate more interesting shapes in our elements. Now, before we continue, I just want to remind you that this interface is my custom interface. It's available on our project files or the shared files that are inside of our Discord. So make sure to check it out. If we press W, E, or R, we're going to go into the gizmo, and the gizmo is going to allow us to create a lot of different things. Right now, I'm starting with this very basic cube. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a little bit of a taper for the cube. I want to be able to generate like a slightly different shape. So I'm going to change the dynamic options here. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to go to the little gizmo right here. And all of these things are the deformations that we can use based on the transforms. And there's one called taper. So if I go into taper mode, by the way, we need to delete the geometries here. So delete lower on the subdivisions. If we go to the little icon right here and we go to taper mode, we're going to get these elements. The arrows or the little orange arrows are going to be the deformers based on which direction you want to do the taper. So for instance, if I want to do the taper towards the front, I'm going to be using this one right here, and I can change how much taper I want. We can also change the exponent of the taper, as you can see, so how round or how like straight we want this thing to be. And yeah, I think something like this is perfectly fine. Once you're happy, make sure to apply, to hit accept on this thing so that you go back to the origin. Now I'm going to, of course, scale this down so that we get a more like interesting shape right here. And this is the shape that I'm going to be using to start modifying some of the elements. One of the reasons why I like to start with this cube is because it has a single polygroup, and you guys are going to see why polygroups are very important as we move forward. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how to use the knife curve. The knife curve is one of the most amazing tools that ZBrush added a couple of years ago, and it's super useful for hard surface stuff. So how do you use this? Very simple, Control-Shift. If you go Control-Shift, you're going to go into your selection options, which by default is the select rect. In my case, I'm going to change this to knife curve. I believe knife curve was introduced in ZBrush 2021, so if you don't have that version or a newer version, you might not have this tool. I'm going to press Control-Shift and I'm going to draw this. You don't need to hold Control-Shift. Very common mistake that people make. You don't need to hold it. Once you draw your line, it's there and you can just modify it as you see fit. You can press the space bar to move it around as well, to position it in a different angle. You can press, again, Control-Shift, and we got the angles right there. I believe you can press Shift to snap the angle. So if you want a specific angle, like 135, you can just press Shift and snap it. And again, just move it around. So what's going to happen with this one is anything that is on the gradient side of this line is going to be cut from the object, like so. Just like that. Like no, there's no special or like interesting things that you need to do. You just do... Just do the cut wherever you want, and that's going to be applied everywhere. I'm going to press X to make sure that this is symmetrical, but if you don't have symmetry, don't worry, I'm going to show you in just a second how to fix it. So let's do a cut right around there. That's a little bit too aggressive. Let's go right there, roughly at the middle. And once we have that, I can go to my options right here, and I have this option called mirror. I'm going to mirror to the X-axis, and then I'm going to mirror and weld to the other side. And I'm going to change the mirror and weld to Y-axis so that we go from the top to the bottom. You can see that we get this elevation thing. In this case, I don't mind, so I'm just going to hit yes, and this is what we get. So as you can see, we've now created this sort of like octagonal looking shape for our element, which is going to be the basis for our main element. Now, I don't like the super thin edges on the top, so what I'm going to go or do here is, again, I'm just going to cut a line down the middle, and I'm going to cut a line down the side. So you can see that's going to give me another cut right there. And we're going to mirror first on the X-axis. Yes. Well, that's the Y-axis. That's fine. And now we're going to change to the X-axis, and we're going to mirror as well. Oh, actually, first mirror and then mirror as well. There we go. So now we have a straight line going across our whole element. This, as you can see, gives us a very nice like start for our whole little like med kit path right here. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use live booleans, and live booleans are another amazing thing that we have here inside of ZBrush. It's actually very funny because Maya sort of copied the live booleans workflow from ZBrush so that they could implement it in Maya 2023, where the boolean is not applied like permanently. It's a live boolean thing, so you can modify the elements, and it works as follows. I'm going to append a new, let's say, cube right here. There we go. And I'm going to use this cube And I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to set this. There's three options that you can do with Boolean. You can do addition, you can do subtraction, and you can do intersection. I'm going to do subtraction. And when we do that and we position the cube right there, if I hit the light Boolean button, the cube is now going to be removing mass, as you can see, from our medkit. So I want this one to be, again, roughly around the center line, right around there, and going probably around there, just to generate, you know, how you can sometimes like press these things and they just like pop open or something like that. Well, that's kind of like the effect that we're going for in this particular case. And again, I'm just going to mirror this to the x-axis. Oh, did not work. It's very weird. It should have worked right there. Oh, I did the y-axis. There we go. X-axis. Perfect. And by doing that, we get both cuts on both of the elements. Now, let's say we wanted to add another cut. So I'm going to append another little like cube. And this cube is going to be on the top section. And it's going to be on the top outer section. So instead of being there, it's going to like cut through the wall of this thing. And again, I'm just going to remove. And as you can see, we get this very, very interesting effect right there. Now with this one, I'm going to mirror, but this one's going to be on the y-axis. Hit OK. And there we go. We have it on the bottom part right there. So very easily, we're just like thinking about and generating something interesting without the need to worry about topology. We're going to be talking about topology probably in another video. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover that. Right now, I just want to focus on the sculpting. Now, let's say we want to add something else, like a little, I don't know, like bumper or something on this area. Maybe that's the thing that you press and it clicks and I don't know, it does like weird stuff. I'm going to hit append and I'm going to add a new cube. And then what I'm going to say is I want to start a new Boolean stack. What does that mean? What does a Boolean stack mean? Well, right now, if I just change the operation here, or even just by leaving this thing right here, what I'm telling ZBrush is that this cube, this new cube is part of the whole stack of elements that are being calculated. If I don't want that, I need to click on this little arrow to make it a new like Boolean stack. So this shape is not being combined with these upper shapes. It's going to be its own little shape. Let's have it right around there. I'm going to try to get the pivot point right there on the center. Perfect. And then I'm going to append another cube. Let's go right here. And this cube, I'm going to say subtraction. As you can see, this is only subtracting from the second cube that we added. It's not subtracting from any of the other elements, which is great because it allows me to generate something a little bit more interesting. I'm going to append another thing. I'm going to append a cylinder. Now, be very careful with cylinders. If you just append the cylinder by default, what's going to happen is that you're going to get all of the sides like visually on your element. You can try subdividing this and hiding the borders, or if not, you're going to have to go to ZModeler and bevel the edges so that you don't get any weird like behaviors. But this one's I'm gonna rotate this 90 degrees and it's gonna go right there. From there, let's extrude this out and perfect. So here what we're doing is we're generating again 3 stacks of different polygons that are generating this shape right here. The cool thing also is I can go to this cube. As you can see, it's got enough subdivision, so I should be able to like cut a couple of elements if I want to. If I want to like bevel the whole thing right there, that looks very, very nice. And that's it. We get a very basic like idea of how our medkit is going to be looking. I do think that I want to add some like extra little things right here, similar to the cylinder. I feel like that's a good idea, but I'm going to be adding them a little bit later. This is, again, just a very basic introduction of these two tools, Live Booleans, the clip brush or the knife brush, sorry. And now we're going to go into Bevel Pro. Bevel Pro is a very cool tool that we're going to be able to use with these things right here, which is going to allow us to, as the name suggests, get some interesting bevels. Because hard surface is all about bevels, right? Like getting this very nice, smooth corners is very, very important for the hard surface process. So the first thing we need to do is we need to convert this live Boolean thing into a permanent mesh. And to do that, I'm going to go to the Boolean option and say make Boolean mesh. As you can see, there's a couple of warnings, but the operation did succeed. So this is what we're going to get. We're going to get 2 elements right here. We're going to have this U mesh right here and this U mesh right here. Let's focus on this one first, on the box. And you can see that we got a little bit of a problem with the Boolean there. It did manage to do it like nicely over there and everywhere else. So to solve that issue, since we do have a nice side over here, it's just a matter of mirror and welding. We mirror and weld, as you can see, we get this. In Boolean, it does a very ugly thing with geometry, but again, we're not really caring about geometry. It just triangulates the borders and merges both surfaces, as you can see right here. Now, this division of polygroups is amazing because this is going to allow us to generate something very cool with Bevel Pro. Bevel Pro was again introduced not too long ago, and it's a way in which we can create the bevel on all of the borders that have a polygroup attached to it. The way this works is very easy. You just go all the way down here to geometry. You look for Bevel Pro. Where is it? Sorry, it's in the subtool palette. There we go. So in the subtool palette, we got Bevel Pro, and I'm going to click Bevel Pro. It says this feature requires a watertight mesh, which means that we have holes somewhere, which is really weird. I don't see any holes, to be honest. If you get that warning, one of the things that we can do is we can go to geometry and go to mesh integrity and either fix mesh or in modify topology, just close holes. That should have closed the holes. Let's try Bevel Pro again. So we go back to Subtool, we go Bevel Pro, and we hit Bevel Pro. There we go. So Bevel Pro is going to open another little software. This is actually another software apart from ZBrush that's using Volcan. So you need to have a graphics card for this to work, or at least a relatively new graphics card for this to work. And as you can see, we are going to be able to change the bevel amount, and it's looking for the polygroups. So it goes to every single polygroup and it generates a mesh. It's pretty much like a live Boolean thing, but it does it here. And it generates a mesh that allows us to control how much or how little we want this bevel to be looking. We can change the polygroup angle, for instance. We can change the bevel smoothness, depending on how we want the bevel to look. And you can just go over here. We can change this to a chamfer instead of a bevel. I actually want a bevel. I'm going to lower the resolution. Actually, let me try going a little bit higher. That looks good. I'm a little bit worried about that part because it's an empty area, but I can see that it's working over here. So that tells me that if I need to like mirror it, I'm going to be able to mirror it. And yeah, in general, it looks good. So once we got this, I can click on this option that says auto apply, and look at that. We get this very nice bevel all around our element. There are a couple of areas that I don't like. You can see those corners right there. So let's not auto apply. Let's try to clean this up a little bit more. Let's remove the bevel smoothness. There we go. Let's try the auto apply. Looks a little bit better. Not perfect, but a little bit better. I really like the ones on the handles and on this bottom parts. Some of these corners are a little bit wonky. This is probably the cleanest corner right here. Now, the thing is, I'm not too worried about it because I know that if one corner is good, then we're going to be able to do it on all of the corners. So I do want to do a little bit more bevel, to be honest, just a little bit more. Try auto apply. And even if we have some of those, I'm going to show you some brushes that we can use to clean that up a little bit. So let's say we're happy with this. I'm just going to hit OK. And what's going to happen is we're now going to get this mesh right here, which again, is not looking bad. It's giving us a nice or interesting result. Yes, there are a couple points, and this is because of the complex surfaces or complex corners that we get right there. But this is where we're going to jump into Dynamesh. So I'm going to go over here to Dynamesh. And of course, if we Dynamesh, we're going to lose a lot of that very pretty stuff. But if we increase the resolution of Dynamesh and we hit polish, when we do Dynamesh, it should give us a way nicer effect, as you can see here. And a lot of those like horrible areas are getting fixed a little bit. And what tools can we use here? There's a couple of brushes. I personally like the Trim Dynamic brush. So I'm just going to use a little bit of Trim Dynamic there to clean this and generate a better flow on that particular corner. And again, once we have one corner clear up, we can also use the BH, which is the hard polish brush. It's going to give us a way tighter one. There we go. And once we have that corner, like in this case, it seems it's like the left corner. We can do, again, a mirror and weld, and now it's on here as well. And we can change this to Y and mirror and weld. Actually, we need to mirror first on the Y axis. There we go. So the corners are clean up there. And then we mirror and weld. Hit yes. And there we go. With that done, as you can see, the corners on all of our element right here are very nicely beveled. If we go to this one right here, we can do the same thing. We can select the guy, go to Bevel Pro. This one should be a little bit easier. You can see that we're not getting all of the edges, and the reason why we're not getting all of the edges is because, as I've mentioned before, this thing uses the polygroups to find what edges it should bevel. So since this original cube was made out of all the same edges, we're getting the same sort of bevel. If we want those edges, we need to go back. So I'm going to hit cancel, and we need to go to the polygroups and find a way to make sure that all of these faces have the same polygroup, which is fairly easy. We just press Ctrl Shift, switch this to select rect. We're going to hide this faces and this back faces, invert the selection, and then hide all of this ones right here. Actually, let's go to the top view. There we go. So I'm gonna hide all of this ones right here, including, oh my god, including these little corners right there. There we go. So as you can see, we get all of this. Oh, careful there. We're missing just one little corner, and we press Control W, and then I'm gonna hide the sides, and I'm gonna press Control W again. So that way, we're gonna have multiple polygroups everywhere. And again, if we go to Bevel Pro, now Bevel Pro is gonna detect those polygroups, and we're gonna get the bevel everywhere. I'm gonna make the bevel a little bit bigger. Oh, it crashed. Okay, let's try this again. So Bevel Pro. That's one of the cool things, that since it's not ZBrush, if it crashes, you just change it. There we go. Oh, again. No, I did it. Okay, cool, did it. Auto apply, and we say, okay, perfect. So look at that. We get some very, very nice clean bevels going around our element. So this is the second part. We've already have a base shape. We've now given it a bevels. It's now time to start adding some details to the whole thing to make this thing really, really nice. So let's go. Now here comes, this would be like when I'm working on characters, this will be like the primary forms, like just the basic shape that you're going to see on the hull or on the ground or on the plane or something that the character is going to be holding. I want to add a little bit more believability. So I'm going to add a couple of details that are going to make this thing look a little bit better. I'm going to grab this thing right here and I'm going to duplicate it. And this is a very like cool concept that I talk about frequently, which is work smart, not hard. So I'm just going to duplicate this thing around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove with my knife brush all of the back parts right there. So now this looks like a little backpack that's actually going to be opening or something and giving us whatever like tools we need to be for us to be finding in the battlefield, right? Now, if you want, of course, you can like scale this a little bit and it's going to give us a nice, interesting border, which doesn't look that bad, but I'm going to leave it like this. And I really like this sort of like seam line that we get on the center. Let's say we want to make this a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to center a pivot point, make this a little bit thicker. And that way it makes sense that this thing's going to be holding like very precious, again, medicines and things like that. So that's the first thing. Now I want to have a handle. I think like a nice handle here on the top might be a good idea. It's also going to give us a nicer, interesting silhouette. And this is where not everything has to be booleans, not everything has to be sculpted. You can use just basic tools to create a shape here inside of the hard surface things. So I'm going to append, in this case, a cylinder. I'm going to bring the cylinder up, make it smaller. Oh. Go right over here. There we go. This one's going to be on the back part. That's why we needed this like back part, because this is the thing that's going to be holding it. Otherwise, the lid's not going to be able to open. I don't know, maybe the lid, I think the lid might open like the other way around. Makes a little bit more sense. So this one's going to be right around there. Let's make it a little bit thinner. And that's it. Now, of course, if we subdivide this, we're going to get a very ugly effect on the caps. Actually, that's not that bad. I was expecting something a little bit worse than that. So let's just do a mirror on the x-axis, and there you go. It's going to be those are going to be like the insertion points for the handles. Let's center the pivot point so that the scale works a little bit better. There we go. And now we need to create, of course, the basic handle. Very well. So for this next part, we're going to go through some basic poly modeling techniques, which we normally use when we're doing ZModeler. We do this inside of Maya, ZBrush, Blender, any software. I personally don't love these tools, to be honest, but they're cool and they can get you out of a tricky situation every now and then. So the first thing I need to do is I need to generate a very basic cube. I'm going to select this poly mesh option right here, and all the way down here on the initialize tab, I'm going to remove or bring this all the way down to 1 and hit key cube so that we get a one-sided cube, which is what we're going to be using to generate all of the effects. Now, once we have this, we just make this a poly mesh 3D. You can see we're going to have them right there. Go back to our tool and say append right here, and we're going to append a very basic cube right here. We select the cube, and this is our tool that we're going to be using to build a lot of stuff. So first, let's do the handle. Very simple one. I'm gonna have a sort of like straight handle on the side, and then this cylinders right here. I'm going to show you a little trick that we can use to make things just a little bit more interesting. But let's start with the handle. The handle is just going to be a very basic square handle. We're going to start right here. Let's go to ZModeler. Turn on the polyframe so that we can see what's going on. Turn on symmetry, and we're just going to extrude this thing out. Then we're going to extrude out again, like this, like right around where it starts with the element, and then out again. There we go. Now I want to modify this element right here. So I'm going to go not to Q mesh. I'm going to go to inset. I'm going to inset the poly group all. What this will do, as you can see, poly group. No, let's not do inset. Let's do Q mesh. Let's try Q mesh. Q mesh poly group all. Oh, is it a different polygroup? That's really interesting. I thought it was the same color. That's fine. So if you have multiple polygroups, the easiest way is just go into etch and go to polygroup, polyloop. And as you can see, that's going to give you the same etch right there. I actually want to polygroup all of these things right here. Now we can Q mesh all of this. And as you can see, we can make them a little bit smaller to generate a little bit of an interesting effect right there. Let's polygroup this guys right here. Let's Q mesh this. Let's first polygroup this face to a different color. You can press shift to change colors. Oh, is it shift or control? I always forget about that one. Alt, it's alt. You can change alt to get a different color. There we go. So it's easier to see. And now we're gonna Q mesh, polygroup all. There we go. Again, when you're Q meshing, you can press alt to get a different polygroup. And now that we have this, again, this poly or Q mesh polygroup all, I can make it a little bit smaller as well. Perfect. Now, if we go to a geometry, we can go to dynamic subdiv and we can turn on dynamic subdiv. And as you can see, we're going to get an interesting handler right there. It's just a very basic way to change the forms of our elements and generate something a little bit more cool. Now that we have this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift D to get out of this thing. And I do want to bevel. So I'm going to go into bevel mode. And if we bevel this line right here, there we go. We should be able to bevel the whole thing. I'm going to bevel the top part and the bottom part. You can click and you're going to get the same bevel as you did on the top, right? Ideally. So if we press D, you can see that this looks a lot more interesting than just a simple square. It looks a little bit weird though. And one of the things I want to do is I actually want to bend this thing. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. But before that, I do want to add a couple of extra support edges because it looks very smooth in certain areas. So Shift D again, and we can bevel that area right there. Bevel that one right there. Let's bevel that one and that one. That one and that one. There we go. And now when we press D, as you can see, this is going to hold a lot better. So how do we bend this? Very easy. W. We go into a little gizmo right here. And in the same way as we use the taper, we can use this bent arc rotation and rotate this thing on this one right here. There we go. I'm just going to bend it slightly. I don't want to bend it like too much because it's going to look a little bit weird. So just kind of like keep it a little bit ergonomical, right? And that's going to be it. I do feel like it's a little bit like big. So let's hit apply right here or accept. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. There we go. I kind of want to just like have it there. I was thinking about like adding or changing the forms of the of this supports right there, but I feel like this one actually looks quite nice. So yeah, there we go. Now let's add the little like panels or elements that I was mentioning on this areas right here. I'm gonna go to Subtool, Append, and we're gonna append another cube right here. Bring it to this area right there. Oh, not that one. This one. Let's bring it to the side. Turn on polyframe, and we're gonna start playing around with the little element that we want to insert right here. Of course, you could do this with booleans. Again, this is one of those things that if you know the tools, you can just like mix and match and use whatever like works best for you on each particular situation. So with this one right here, I'm gonna go to insert. We're gonna insert multiple edge loops. It seems like a good idea. So I'm just gonna click and drag, and as you can see, we get that very nice effect. That looks good. And now Q mesh polygroup, and we just like get this guys in. We press the letter D. And if we subdivide a couple of times, we extrude up, we're going to be able to have a very nice effect right there. Let's go back because I know that that's going to work. So what I want to have is I want to have a little bit of a harder edge, right? So I'm going to, again, go into or turn on polyframe, and I'm going to bevel this edge loop right here. There we go. Now, another thing that we can do is we can use an insert edge loop again. So insert edge loop, but we're going to do single edge loop. Let's isolate this real quick. And I want to insert some edge loops right here on the center. So we get a nicer, like sharper effect. Same thing here. I'm going to insert one right there and one right there. So when we press D, as you can see, that gives us a nicer effect. We definitely need one more Shift D and one more insert edge loop on the top here and another one on the bottom. That's looking better. And all of this, guys, I definitely want to bevel. So we're going to go this way, bevel, and we're going to go there. And just since it's the same bevel, I'm just going to click on them. They should respect the same amount of bevel that we have on all of them. It's a very, very fast and easy way to build up shapes, complex shapes, that are going to make our whole thing way more interesting. Now, if we subdivide, as you can see, that looks very, very nice. You might get this on certain like productions, like the more curvature you have, the trickier it gets. So that curvature on the inside can be a little bit tricky to retopologize, because you need to have maybe 1 or 2 extra lines to really hold that effect. But you can see that looks really, really nice. So I'm just going to mirror this to the other side, and you can see how our med kit is looking very, very like interesting. Yeah, now let's go and talk about, we're going to be talking about the next thing, which is some of the details that we can add, and how to repurpose certain elements to, again, generate more visual interest. So here we go. Now, of course, one of the most important things that we need is the cross, right? Like the red cross on the center that tells us that this is supposed to be a med kit, and a couple of little extra artifacts that we can add as sort of like indents or things to make the whole thing more interesting. So one of the things that I see here is a lock. A lock would be very cool, and this is where repurposing assets is very, very important. There's a lot of key bashing involved with hard surface. So for instance, I can grab this handle right here and just make it smaller. As you can see right there, let's center the pivot point. Make it flatter. Yes, it's going to look a little bit deformed and stuff, but it should be more than enough to pass as one of the locks here on the bottom part of the element. Another thing is contrast. If we already have one line or one like padlock that's looking up, let's change this one and make it look down. So when you press this thing down or something, this element over here is going to open and allow you to access the medicines instead of the element. Not a lot of people are going to see it because it's down there on the bottom. But again, it's one of those things that really helps like sell the idea of how complex this thing can be. The next one that I'm going to show you, it's a little bit interesting because it requires, again, for us to go back into the Boolean options to add a little bit more detail. And you can see that when you press the letter B on your keyboard and you see all of the brushes, there's one specific brush called IMM Industrial Parts and IMM Army Curves. We also have another one that's specifically for Booleans. Let me find it right here. I can even press, can I say Boolean? No, I don't think I can see it. But there's one that's specifically made of hard surface things that we can use for Booleans. Let's start with insert multi-mesh, which has to do with this thing that we're talking about, the kit bashing. So I'm going to append a sphere. This is a placeholder sphere. You can place the sphere wherever you want. I usually like to make it really small and have it inside of the model. And if we go V and then we go IMM, you're going to see this IMM industrial parts, IMM machine parts, IMM steam gears. So there's a lot of things that we can use. There we go. Here's the one that I was mentioning, IMM Boolean brushes, which we're going to be talking about right now. So this ones right here are things that we can add to the element that are going to be used as a Boolean mesh. I'm going to grab this guy right here, and on the options, I'm going to bring it all the way down so that the Boolean stack starts all the way up here. And then on this sphere right here, I can grab any of this ones, like this panel latch, for instance. And if I just drag and drop this panel latch right here and turn this on into subtraction, you can see that this thing is going to add a very like nice, interesting effect to the whole element right there. Something that will be a little bit complicated, not super complicated, but a little bit tricky to sculpt or add by ourselves. We can very, very easily add it with this Boolean meshes. So for instance, that line right there. So it's just a little detail, right? Like a little extra detail. Those are the kind of details that you're not going to be retopologizing by hand. Like they're going to be there. They're going to allow you to get like some interesting shapes, but you're not going to be doing it as much. We can change it to this indent, for instance, or like this one. Where is it? There we go. You can see it right there. So we can grab another indent, for instance, right there. Rotate it a little bit so that we can see it from the front. Push it right around there. Perfect. Another thing, like this sort of elements are very common for hard surface stuff. We can do like this bolts right there. Go. Like this frame, I feel like, I don't know, that might be a little bit too much. Power detail. I like this one. Let's do one power detail right around here. And I know, again, I'm gonna get some comments on the what's the word, on the video, being like, oh, but you could definitely add those as like alphas and height map information later on in the texturing things. And yes, that's perfectly valid. But what if you wanted to 3D print this for cosplay or something? You can't 3D print a texture, right? So you need to have the model ready for you. This is, again, a lot of things that I've learned throughout the years. Like, there are multiple processes and multiple ways to get to the same result, but it always depends on what the final like element or the final thing that you're going for is going to be. Because otherwise, like, there's just so many options. So let's do like another one right there. And that's it. I like this one. So once we have this, we can just mirror this to the other side. And as you can see, that adds a bunch of different details to our element. Now let me show you one final thing, which is going to be for the main cross that we're going to have here on the center. Because other than that, I think we're good. I do want kind of like bring this down. So let me bring this down after the mesh or the layer stack. And I do feel like adding something here on the side might be interesting, like this. So like panel right there. Let's go over here. One, there we go. And I'm just gonna push it out. Let me. I see it there, but I don't see it. Close. And that's weird. Let me do it again. There we go. So technically, since this one is adding, let's push this up. Layer stack should be working. There we go. This layer stack should be working now. We can use this part to just add a little bit of an extra visual interest there. Let's make sure that's aligned there. And let me add, just for the sake of it, both extra bolts here. There we go. So now that we have that, we can again just mirror this to the other side. It's going to be the exact same thing. This is again working as a Boolean mesh, and we got this right here. Now let's go for the cross. Now for the cross, I'm going to turn off light Boolean for just a second so that we can focus on the polygroups a little bit better. And let's append again the little like square thing that we have right here, the little cube that we've been using. So all of the details are going to be gone for just a second, but don't worry too much about it. We're going to make this a little bit smaller, something like that. And what I want to do is I want to create a cross made out of 4 elements. So it's not going to be like a full cross. I'm going to grab the bottom part of this face and I'm going to poly mesh or poly group this little guy right here. Oh, poly group, let's say single poly. There we go. We're just going to drag this down, something like that. And then what we can do is we can mask this poly. Mask this poly like this. Control, click, invert. And then with R, we can scale this in to generate this sort of like shape. Hopefully you guys can see where this is going. So we can, it's kind of like the buttons on a controller, right? Like on a PlayStation controller or something like that. So that's what I want to do here. And there we go. We got this very, very cool shape right here. I'm going to Control D a couple of times. Actually, let's bevel it first. So bevel edge loop complete. There we go. That's right around what I want. And I'm just going to start adding some support edges. So I'm going to go to insert. We're going to insert one right there, another one, and another one. Perfect. And then one at the top. Make sure symmetry is turned on. So that we insert one on both sides. This is again very traditional like subdivision surface things that we do here. That's weird that we're not getting the smooth on the other side. It's no big deal because again we can use the tried and true trick of just like merging or mirroring well to the other side. That's one of the secrets that I tell people, and if you've been watching until this point, thank you, by the way. But there's always so many ways to get to the same result. So don't worry if you need to like improvise and do things like that. There we go. So Control D, and you can see that we get this very nice clean line right there. There's a little bit of a weird pinch right there. I'm not sure if, oh, it's because of the scale. That's a little bit bad, but here's how we're going to solve it. I'm going to give this a couple of subdivisions. I'm going to turn this resolution up. I'm going to polish this and Dynamesh. I'm not going to freeze subdivisions. There we go. It's not great, but it's quite nice. Actually like the sort of soft effect. And then with the knife curve, I'm just going to do a cut here on the top and a cut on the bottom or in the back. It's going to give me a super straight effect right there. Now we're going to position it right around there. We're going to move its pivot to around there. And if we Control Alt and drag, I wish we could rotate here. That's fine. I'm just gonna duplicate, rotate this 90 degrees, duplicate, rotate this 90 degrees, duplicate, rotate this 90 degrees, and then go to this one right here and just merge down. We're gonna start merging down. So merge down, okay, merge down, okay, merge down, okay. And that is it. Got our little like element healing path thing. Now we can turn on our elements right here, turn on live boolean. This is right now set to add. It's under the stack. We can even like tell it to start a new stack so it doesn't interfere with the previous ones. And there we go. That's looking quite nice. I kind of want to add, I'm actually gonna do this. I'm gonna remove the start stack. I'm gonna duplicate this. The first one, oh my god, sorry. The first one is gonna be like removing elements. And then this second one is going to be a little bit smaller. There we go. See that? So we get this sort of like interpolation between both elements. This is the kind of stuff that, again, you would not like retopologize by hand. You would just try to generate a sort of a bake from the element. That one looks really interesting. And yeah, finally, the last part that we need to do is, if we want, we can damage this thing a little bit. So I'm going to go to this element right here, to the top part, and I'm going to use my trim dynamic to break a little bit of the symmetry. As you can see, we don't have symmetry enabled. And I'm just going to start like damaging, doing a little bit of like edge wear on certain areas of the element. I'm going to use like my clay builder. We got like 500,000 polygons. So this is more than enough to add this sort of like, again, hits, dents, scratches, things like that. We can go dimming standard. Let's add, I know this is making it look a little bit more stylized than maybe it should. All of this, of course, can be added to in the texturing department as well. But I always like to break things up a little bit to make them a little bit more perfect. Some people get worried about this part and be like, oh, but the retopology is going to be a pain because now it's asymmetrical. Nah, it's not that bad of an option. As long as the silhouette doesn't change that much, you're going to be fine. And there's this amazing artist. If you guys haven't seen him, he's really good. This is actually one of the artists that I learned from back in the day. His name is Ryan Kingsley, and he follows a method where he's like, if you make sure that your high poly is as nice as possible, then it doesn't matter if there's extra work on the retopology, it's going to be worth it. So it's way better to have it's a good problem to have when you need to make sure that you capture all of the details from your amazing high poly, rather than having a very easy high poly to work with, but then it just looks like meh, like garbage, right? So always go the extra mile when you can, especially for your portfolio pieces, which, by the way, we're going to have very soon, next week on November 17, I think it's our next portfolio review. So if you haven't submitted, make sure to go to our Discord channel. And that is it, my friends. This is it. This is our final kit right here, ready to be going into the game's production pipeline, which is, of course, the retopology, UV, and texturing, and all that stuff. Let me know in the comments if you want me to go through it. I might not be able to do it this week, but we can add this to the list of videos that I'm going to be producing in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be happy to show you some of the stuff. But I also want to mention that we already have the game production pipeline available in one of our premium courses, which is the Blender Axe for Blender. The Lava Axe for Blender. So if you want to check it out, it's going to be in the description. And yeah, that's pretty much it, my friends. Thank you very much for being here until the very end, and I hope to see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.